we're going to start today with mailbag question of the day because Michkov mania is running wild, folks.
It is.
It is. I know maybe it's just because we're grasping. We just want it to be real, so we're going to make it real. But we're going to do some speculating today.
Why not?
And like,
It's Michkov,
listen, man,
man.
it's fun. It's what the entire thing is about.
Yeah.
Like, look, they could get some other guys, like maybe Oliver Bonk is awesome. Shit like that could all happen. But right now, we're looking at this thing, and it's Michkov. He's the guy.
Imagine how, and don't get me wrong, big Ryan Leonard fan. Love that player. I think he's going to be really, really good for the Capitals. He was my number 2 choice if Michkov wasn't there. But imagine the feeling in the fan base if Matvei Michkov was not drafted by the Flyers last summer. Like, I feel like, look, there's still a lot of hopelessness among Flyers fans. There probably will be until they actually do prove that they are a true contender. Kind of the same way there was a lot of hopelessness in the Phillies fan base up until the moment when they finally won a playoff series and then won a second playoff series. And then it was like, oh crap, we need to get on board. And now everybody loves the Phillies. The Flyers need to prove to a lot of their fans that they are back. And until they actually do that tangibly with playoff success and a roster that actually looks like it could be a contender, a lot of fans aren't going to fully get on the bandwagon. But I do think that if Michkov wasn't here, and by here I mean just nebulously in the organization in theory.
He's this thing we have to look forward to.
Yes, that the hopelessness factor would be so much higher. And I think Ryan Leonard, who I very well believe could have been the pick they would have taken had Michkov not been there, great prospect. I think he's going to be a darn good player. But it would just be a different feel if he was the guy they were waiting for and not this potential Russian superstar.
And it's like, that article that comes out yesterday, and it wasn't the Russian one. It was like one of the main articles that came out, like with the quoting Alex Appleyard's tweet, like it's embedded and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's like, generally the lead is, generally regarded as the second most skilled player in last year's draft. Like, oh, right. Yeah. Connor Bedard, the generational talent. Like, this guy might be closer to him than he was 3. Like if all things were
Fantilli and Carlson pretty darn good.
Very well. I'm just like the fact that he's kind of in that group and the Flyers may have fallen ass backwards into him because of the crazy situation. It's like, yeah, well, we're in perfect position to take this guy.
I mean, I can tell you he was my number 2.
Yeah.
Like Bedard was 1, Michkov was 2, Fantilli was 3, Carlson was 4, and that wasn't because I thought the Flyers were going to get Michkov. That's because I thought Michkov was the second best player in the draft.
Yeah. And he's also like, we don't get to, we see the clips and stuff, and some people, are watching his games at 10 in the morning or whatever they are. But he's this like teenage foreign entity that we can't really like grasp.
Yeah.
So like the enigmatic effect makes it so much more exciting.
He's more of a concept than a person at this point.
It could be anything. It's just concept of superstar. We don't even really fully know what it is. And I think that adds to a lot of the excitement. But with the report that came out yesterday that we might be seeing, it's a possibility. The possibility exists.
The door has been opened a crack.
Yes, Matvei Michkov could
Maybe more than a crack.
Could arrive in Philadelphia as soon as this coming season. Like, he'd be here this summer for training camp. Well, there's a lot of excitement.
Man, can you imagine? Not even training camp, because the in the report it says that a decision would be made by the end of June.
End of June.
Can you imagine how packed development camp would be in Voorhees in July?
Oh, it's like there's going to be
like you wouldn't be able to get in.
No, there's going to be like cops directing traffic in Voorhees because there's a goddamn 200-car pileup trying to get into the whatever it's called, not the skate zone anymore. Flyers Training Center.
Yes.
But we start with the mailbag question of the day. It's John Bannon Jr., and I think this is interesting. We touched on it a little bit yesterday. If Michkov does arrive this summer, and that's a big if, would that change Flyers' strategy on whether they try to sign a big-time free agent or go after a second-tier free agent, or no, nothing changes, kind of just stay the course? All right, so for the sake of this conversation, and John acknowledges it in his question.
Big if.
Right. Like, who the hell knows? Again, it's Russia. Literally anything could happen. Anything. There's nothing off the table. But for the sake of this conversation, it's June 30th, not May 1st. and we just found out he's coming. Free agency starts tomorrow. Does this change the plan?
The one way I would say, at least for me, that it changes the plan a little bit is that I think it makes it more important to get a center somehow. Because I don't think you can go into Michkov's. I mean, you can. I guess you could do whatever you want. I wouldn't want to go into Michkov's first year in Philadelphia crossing your fingers that first half Sean Couturier is going to come back. I guess you could put Michkov with Morgan Frost, and maybe Morgan Frost gets this massive boost and becomes a point-per-game guy next to Michkov. That would be cool. But to me, it would increase the urgency to find some way to get a center. Now, granted, the center pool isn't the best. This really isn't the best free agent class beyond, I mean, the two big names are Sam Reinhart and Steven Stamkos. Now, it seemed like Tampa in their exit interviews today and just the reports that have come out over the last couple of days, it does seem like Tampa is pushing the narrative that they think they will be able to keep Steven Stamkos. We'll see how it plays out. They don't have a ton of cap space. Who knows? But it's at least possible that Stamkos will be available. It certainly does seem like Sam Reinhart will be available because I have no idea how Florida fits him. But again, stranger things have happened. Maybe they trade somebody. Who knows? Beyond those two guys, though, like it's just, I like Jake Gensel as a player. I don't think the news that Michkov is coming here would have me be like, yeah, throw 8x8 at Jake Gensel. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like there's still, and we talked about this a little earlier before the show.
Or 7x8.
The idea when they drafted him, it was, okay, 3 years from now, we're going to have him on an ELC.
Right.
We're talking about a 21, 22-year-old kid. That's kind of the new, like, entering your prime age. It's no longer like, 24, 25. Like, no, you're early 20s. You're entering your prime, at least. That's a huge competitive advantage to have maybe a superstar, a guy who's ascended to that point.
Yes.
Like Kaprizov when he came over in 24, 25 years old.
Yeah, he was
and
more
he was even older.
Yeah.
Like that's a huge competitive advantage. You then, because of that, if we go out and overpay a free agent or something, it ain't that big a deal. We can do it.
Yeah.
We related it to like having the rookie quarterback.
Right.
Like, hey man, when you're not paying the most important position, you can pay some other dudes.
Yep.
And that really makes your team good, even if it's a little bit of an overpay, you know? With him being a teenager, 20, does that kind of change how, like, because we've always, when Michkov gets here, we fucking hit the ground running. It's time to go. If he comes over early, is it still that feeling?
I think it does change the equation a little bit because when we were viewing Michkov as having the 3-year timeline, we were assuming that he would, when he got over here, would be close to a finished product. He could still get better. Guys get better from 22 to 25, 26 all the time. But if he was already a very successful KHL player with 3-4 years of KHL experience under his belt, one of the better KHL scorers, which I think he would be if he stays in the KHL for another 2 seasons, then you're thinking he comes over and he's immediately a 70-point guy right off the bat, maybe more. If he were to come over next season, I would still expect Michkov to be a good NHL player right off the bat. Like, I am not thinking he's going to come over here and score 10 goals.
I would think he'd be productive.
Yeah, but it's important for people to realize that, like, he is still developing, that he wouldn't come over at age 20. Like, Connor Bedard had a good rookie year. He was probably going to win the Calder. He was not he's not what he's going to be.
Yeah.
And if Michkov comes over and plays next season for the Philadelphia Flyers, I do not think what he is at age 20 in his draft plus 2 season is what he will ultimately become. So I do agree that it's a different situation in terms of urgency, because I don't think it's like, Michkov's here, we need to go out and get everyone, because now Michkov isn't doing his developing in the KHL.
Yeah.
He's doing his developing here. And this year and next year would be developmental years for Michkov, where you still expect he's going to be a pretty darn good player, but he's still working on the finer points of his overall play and filling out his game and getting bigger, getting stronger, things like that. I don't think it's the same situation as if he comes over 2-3 years down the road and you're thinking, okay, he is close to what he's going to be, and he's going to come over as close to fully formed as you can expect on an entry-level deal. Let's go out and get a $10 million a year guy to support him. I don't think it's quite the same situation. I agree with you.
Yeah, I'm like, and free agency, granted, like you're always going to overpay guys, and the way the NHL system works, like most sports, like you don't hit free agency till at least 27 usually. You're on the back end a lot of the time. So you look at free agents, and it's like, well, if it's early, now we're talking about it's not a 27, 28, 29-year-old guy. You're signing him for maybe 2-3 years from now. And it's like, well, how does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, so when this guy's 30, 32 is when we're actually going to be competing. Did this signing help us at all? I'm like looking at this list, and there's so few. Like, if they signed Steven Stamkos, I would be happy.
That'd be fun.
That would be fun. I
That'd be
don't
really
care.
Fun. Especially on a short-term deal.
Yeah.
I'm as I said yesterday, if you can get Steven Stamkos to agree to a 2-year contract, go for it. I love that. But I just don't think you could.
I'm looking at this list, and maybe it's just my bias of being a huge fan of this player. The only one that even makes remote sense to me is Shane Gostisbehere. And like that only makes so much sense because they have a bunch of guys.
Yeah.
Not a lot of them are any good.
Yeah,
and
he would be blocking, in theory, a guy like Emil Andre or something from giving. But Gostisbehere is a legitimately good power play quarterback. Their power play is historically awful. You could very easily talk yourself into it.
But like as much as I think that would be fun and I want that guy, you know what we need more than that? Jamie Drysdale to turn into him.
Yeah.
Like it's maybe more, while I would like the power play to be better, I want making it better with him doesn't really solve a long-term problem.
Yeah. One guy who, and I really haven't been following this closely because they're still in the playoffs. They're obviously a cup contender. I don't know if they have designs on re-signing him and they just haven't agreed to it. Given the weakness the Flyers have on the left side, Teuvo Teravainen's interesting to me.
That was interesting.
He's an interesting guy to me, especially if you have Michkov, because the intriguing part about Teravainen to me is that he is not just a legitimate offensive weapon. He's like a legitimately good defensive winger too. And I wouldn't hate if you can't get Michkov a clear-cut 1C right off the bat, I don't hate the idea of having one of his wingers be able to support him defensively. So that would be interesting. I'd be more interested in Teravainen if he hits the market, even though he's 29, he's a little on the older side. I'd be more interested in Teravainen if he hits the market if Michkov comes over next year than I would be if Michkov doesn't. I'll put it that way.
It was yesterday or Monday, one of them. We talked about looking at the Toronto situation, and that might be different now. They win last night, maybe building some momentum. We'll see. But there's a good chance they shake up that core. And we focused on Mitch Marner mostly because it just seems like he'd be the odd man out. And, Nylander signed long-term. Matthews ain't going nowhere if they have any brains,
Exactly.
Like if they're not just stupid as hell.
Yeah.
Something that never really occurred to me, and this might not be the smartest thing.
Okay.
1 year left of John Tavares. Just to have almost not to compare the two, but like a Yager-ish veteran for Michkov. Like I realize
I wouldn't hate it.
I realize Tavares
I really wouldn't hate it.
Is 33. He's not the player he once was.
Still pretty good. But
that's last year he had 36 goals and 80 points. He had 29 goals this year. He played almost 18 minutes a game. He's 60% in the faceoff dot the last 3 years, basically. Like, you could do worse. I'm not saying this is a long-term solution. I'm not saying at the price point you're acquiring him at, it's the best idea, but for 1 year and then see where you are, to have that veteran center presence, just someone steady that you can at least count on for something. It's not crazy,
Bill,
to me.
It's an interesting idea, and I don't hate it. What I will say is that he does have the no move clause. He obviously signed in Toronto because he's from Toronto, grew up a Maple Leafs fan. Would he waive it at all? I don't know. Would he waive it to come play for John Tortorella? I really don't know. But I like where your head's at because, look,
this is all based on them going to him and being like, we're shaking this thing up. Like, and maybe he just goes, nah, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, I want to spend as long as I can playing in Toronto. Look, he's not an $11 million a year player, but if you're trading for him, you're basically getting a 1 year, $11 million a year contract for the Flyers and their timeline. And given the weakness they have down the middle, I would not have any issue with that move in terms of how it works with the rebuild. It would boost the power play, I think, in the short term. It definitely would boost their center depth. I'm just skeptical that John Tavares would waive his no-move clause at all. And if he does, that he would waive it to come to Philly. But I like where your head's at,
I'm
Bill.
just trying to find, like, and not even, he's just a a well-known player on a team we just talked about in this situation.
You're thinking
more
the right way.
More of an archetype than even maybe the specific player. Like, okay, overpaid guy on a short-term deal who isn't worth the money he's making, but he doesn't stink.
The other potential complication there is, I know we kind of look at the Flyers cap situation as it doesn't matter because they're not trying to compete. They actually have a lot of cap obligations for next year. They have some weird
stuff going on.
They'll be under the cap. Don't get me wrong. This is not a situation where they are going to be in cap hell, but they just took on the Ryan Johansson contract. You've got Cal Peterson in limbo. Like, they have the Ryan Ellis deal. Yeah, you can put it on LTIR, but they would rather not. They have a lot of cap obligations.
Tippett's going from 1.5 to 6.2.
Yeah. I'm not saying they couldn't figure out a way to do it. I'm just saying that it's not as easy as you might think for them to just fit $11 million on their cap.
Literally,
they would have to do some serious maneuvering.
There's only like 3 teams that could. Oh yeah, we'll just take on $11 million.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
There aren't even like that many cap floor teams anymore. But you also. You had an interesting idea, and I see the super chats. We will get to your super chats. You had the interesting thought, like, looking at the list, it's like, what if these I don't know. What are these free agents? It's not, even if we wanted them to go all in, like, Michkov's here, let's fucking go for it, boys. You look at the list and go like, okay, so we have to make trades.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But you had the interesting thought, there might be some free agents who aren't on this list yet.
Correct.
And you used the Matt Duchene example.
Yeah. Well, because Matt Duchene was a guy, I mean, in retrospect, very well might have been the best free agent signing of last summer. Dallas signs him to a 1-year, $3 million contract. He gets 25 goals and 65 points in 80 games, and now he's a key cog on a team with serious designs on winning the Stanley Cup. Great signing. He wasn't a free agent until June 30th when he was bought out. So those are the types of things where some guys will pop up late in June who you had no idea were going to be available because of surprise buyouts. Maybe there will be fewer this summer because the cap is actually going to go up.
That's fair. Yeah.
There still will be teams that will be crunched. And there will be teams that maybe have had conversations with Sam Reinhart and are like, well, he's interested. Maybe we should clear some cap space to try to fit him. And that could theoretically open up some guys to hit the free agent market that you don't even realize are going to be free agents. Just something to keep an eye on, given what happened last summer, where possibly the best free agent signing of the summer was a guy who 4 days before free agency, no one knew was going to be a free agent.
We all silly like the mayor.